Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this, our April 2025 webinar as a part of our CARICAD webinar series, where we support the ongoing development of our leaders and stakeholders, where we facilitate continuous learning development, sharing of ideas and best practices, all of pertinence to all of us, particularly in this Caribbean region. My name is Loy Parks. I am the Leadership Development and Institutional Strengthening, specialist here at CARICAD. And I will be your moderator today. With us today is someone who I believe is not a stranger to many of us, none other than Mr. Verieux Mourillon. Uh, I'm very affectionately known across our region as Val. He wears many hats, and one of the hats that he wears is that he's an associate consultant with CARICAD. Um, we know him as a senior action learning coach with the World Institute for Action Learning. He has extensive experience in human resource management, consulting, change management, leadership development. Has held many senior roles across this region, including with CXC, National Bank of Dominica, and the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, among others. Affectionately, our Vow. And he's going to be talking to us today about reinventing our organizations with responsible leadership. John Maxwell famously said, everything rises and falls on leadership. And so we look forward to not only hearing from Val, but we also look forward to hearing from you, your comments, your questions, and your engagement in this discussion around responsible leadership and how we reinvent our organizations. So, some of you may be with us for the very first time. A special welcome to you all. And if you're here for the first time, you probably have never heard about our ground rules. And this is just the things that we do to make this the best possible virtual learning experience. And so we want to close all software applications apart from Zoom and to mute our various phones, or at least turn the ringers down. Remind your colleagues this is your learning hour. And so they can release you for an hour and allow you to lean in and to get all that you can from this session. You don't necessarily have to speak in this session, but if you want to, and there have been opportunities so to do, you're going to need to have a good working headset and your microphone working. And thanks be, um, bandwidth, internet content connectivity is improving a lot in our wonderful region, but sometimes we do have those bandwidth issues, and so it is best to plug in your internet cable if you have that available. And so, as usual, we always, and you see, we have a lot of regulars. People are part of our community who already know what we do, right? And so we always ask you, where are you joining us from today? So we see lots of people joining us from BVI. I want to shout out to Michael. Michael, one of our alumni from Suriname. Sandra, well, when Sandra saw the artist said, wow, she has to come, right? I see a few folks joining from Anguilla. Yes, welcome. Sharon Martin, my sister from the Bahamas. Yes, Sharon is doing great things in public sector transformation in the Bahamas. Special welcome to you. I see folks here from my own home country, Jamaica, and that is where I am joining from today. Faye is one of our alumni, COVID conqueror from giving sunshine greetings from Barbados. Yes, indeed. And I am seeing all the good folks from BVI. Welcome. Leah is joining from Barbados. Yes, indeed. So really good to have you all here. I see Sandrine joining also from BVI. Indisha joining from Grenada. Yes. Diana. Hi, Diana. Diana, I had the privilege of training Diana in leadership development in Belize. Diana Castillo, welcome. Right, let's see. Who else are we having here? I thought that Norma from Barbados. Yes, welcome. Nikisha joining from Trinidad. Yes, indeed. And I also note quite a few of our alumni. Oh, and here comes, I have to give us all the very important people in the room. Augusta Degazon, Cabinet Secretary from St. Lucia, and our esteemed alumni.
Indeed, indeed.
Much, he is, well, he's not joining us, he's joining right now. So we're really just so happy to have all of you, trust me. Those who are regulars, those are alumni, those who are whatever means you found out, you are all part of this family. So a very special welcome to you all. And so, Vo and I had some warm-up questions that we want to ask you, right? So here is question number one. Imagine your leadership style is an ice cream flavor, right? What is it called and what weird toppings does it have? Think about that. So, Roger, I wanted to just draw a line there in the chat so we can distinguish the responses. So, you want to quickly type in the chat, right? Imagine your leadership style is an ice cream flavor. What is it called and what weird toppings does it have? Give you a chance to think about that. And I continue to say, welcome. Josette is joining from St. Lucia. Chanel from Barbados. Yes. Jamila. Hi, Jamila. Joining us from St. Kitts. Norisia from Antigua. Yes. Wendy from Trinidad. Kayan from Jamaica. Noreen Belnavis. Hi there, my good friend Noreen. So, Andra says, it will be coffee with chocolate chip. Marsha said, with raspberry topped with pecans. Jermaine Jean Pierre, another of our esteemed alumni. Hi, Joel. Um, Hold on, let me just make sure I am seeing what is being said here in the chat. Coconut and Skittles. Sandrine said Rocky Road, and the topping is sprinkled with some worms. Joycelyn is rum and raisin. And Joycelyn, it has to be Jamaican rum and raisin, where you smell the rum from a distance. Good morning, Andrea, another one of our alumni, joining us from St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Let me see. Oh, I'm seeing some very interesting things here. Norval would have Neapolitan topped with raisins. Jacqueline Bailey's ice cream with chocolate ganache topping. Woo-hoo! This thing is making me hungry and want to break my diet. Kemp, key lime and guava berry jelly. Ooh, oh Lord. Sybil says passion fruit with coconut sprinkles. Oh my goodness. Nerine says coconut with almonds. Felina's pistachio with multicolored sprinkles. Oh, there. But I don't know if I can read all of these. It's so much. Oh, Christine Brooks says cookies and cream with nuts. Sophia Berkeley, raspberry cheesecake. Endisha vanilla, visionary swirl. Oh, la, 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 la. Sharon Martin says, man is Superman ice cream flavor. I've never heard of that one. Um, I have sprinkles, chocolate drippings, and pineapple chunks. Wait, yes, sir. Okay. No, forgive me if I don't read all of them, but if you want to get let's go to question number two. So let's draw a line there, Roger, and said, if leadership were a movie genre, what would it be? Drama, comedy, superhero, chick? Romantic comedy, there are so many. Would it be a horror story? If leadership were a movie genre, what would it be? Ooh, well, I think my answer it would be drama. Yes, Chanel is with me. I see a lot of genre. Sharon said it would just have Denzel Washington. I like that. Laura says comedy. Zebulon says superhero. Natalie says drama. Toya says drama. Somebody says combination of drama and comedy. I see a lot of that. Emery says superhero. Ooh, drama and comedy. Drama, yeah, drama and suspense. There's Andrea. Comedy. Ooh, mixture of drama and comedy. Yes, so I see drama, I see comedy, I see suspense. Yes. All righty. All right, let me go to question number adventure and drama. Ooh, all right. Next one. If leadership was a dance, would your team's performance look like a smooth waltz or a chaotic break dance? Why? Oh my wordy. Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. Emery's here for the dancing. Ah, ah. Chaotic break dance. I said the break dance. Ah, a soca wind up. After all, it can't just be one answer or just two options. I say some say tango, some say smooth waltz most days. Chaotic breakdance and soca groovy. That's Vera. A combination. Rosemary says, Rosemary says waltz and plan movement. Kendra says, Nova says Jamaican bubble. And Disha says it would be a bold hip hop routine. Jillian says salsa. Ooh. Waltz and salsa. Orville says chaotic breakdance and crazy characters. Arlene says classical. Michael says a combination like life. Good morning, Damian Percival. Good morning. Bronwyn says soca with salsa. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. All right. Let me go to question number 4. Imagine your team is a band. Who's rocking the leadership role and how's the music? People, don't blame me for these questions. You know, these questions come from Bo. Okay? Imagine your team is a band. Who's rocking the leadership role and how's the music? Oh, let me see. The music is gospel. The inspector and gospel. The drummer is leading. Damian is a lead singer. Sophie says, I am rocking the leadership role and the music is cool and calm. Yes, sir. Michelle says partisan load. Colleen says off key. The drummer and the vocalist says Emery. Richard Hutchinson says the musicians. Hi, Richard. Joining, I think that's Richard from after the Prime Minister, after the cabinet, sorry, in Jamaica. Beer says I am, and we're dancing to calypso and R&B. Dr. Alien says steel pan, tenor pan. The music is tranquil. The conductor is leading. Moevo says compa. No, I don't know what that is. So you have to tell me that one. Hannah says the lead singer and calypso. Sharon Dennis says gospel and jazz. Janelle says country line dancing. Marshawn Gum says bass guitar is the lead and music is on beat. Lillian says rock and roll. Andra says gospel to stay calm. Oh, I love it. I love it. I love it. And the last question. If your boss was a superhero, what would be their superpower? Or conversely, what would be their kryptonite? Yeah, yeah. If your boss was a superhero, what would be their leadership superpower? Mm-mm-mm. Sophia said their superpower is compassion. Alien says peace. Rosemary says calmness. Lynette says superpower. Adaptiveness, says Michael. Finding a common good. Yes. I would say, my boss, executive director of CARICAD, asking deeper questions. That is his superpower. Colleen says empathy. Carlton says justice with humility. Healer, collaboration, peaceful. Emery says brainiac, peace, kindness, reproductive leadership, empowerment, says Andrea. Sharon says collaboration, Sharon Martin. Oh, I like these. Strategic, says Ethelyn. Peace and togetherness, unity, empowerment, kindness with a bit of rock and roll. Peaceful. Janet said, there, Hurley, the superpower will be telling you about yourself with a single stare while maintaining composure. I love it. Delegating and empowering, says Marsha Ann. Oh my, I love it, I love it, I love it. And there is a method in the madness, and when Vo comes on, it will all come together. But before I bring on Vo, for anybody who is here for the first time, let me tell you a little bit about CARICAD and the work that we do. Um, CARICAD stands for Caribbean Center for Development Administration. If you were to put that in Spanish, yes, it has something to do with our historical roots. We are celebrating 45 years of existence this year. We are an arm of CARICOM, and we exist to support member states in the area of public sector capacity building, public sector capability, and to support them in the process of public sector transformation. And we do so through providing a number of services via technical assistance and capacity building interventions, including leadership development, business process analysis, organizational development and design, HR management and development, governance and policy, just to name a few. And our work is supported by the Charter for the Public Services, which is a common conceptual framework that we use and our member states can also use to guide their public sector transformation efforts. And this conceptual framework is um, is held up by 6 main pillars. And you see them there in what we affectionately call our charter house. And those 6 pillars are governance, standards, capacity, accountability, openness, and legislation. And so if you want to learn more about the work that we do and the technical assistance and capacity building that we provide, you can visit our website at www.caricad.net. And we'll share some more information a little later on. And so it is my absolute delight to hand over now to Vo as he takes us through his thoughts and invite us to share our own thoughts, reinventing our organizations with responsible leadership. And I won't waste any time. I want to give Vo as much time as possible, and also to allow us to also have time for our discussion segment. So Vo, I have stopped sharing, so you should be able to share your screen, and over to you.
Thank you very much, Lloyd. Thank you very much. And thanks to all the, one moment, let's see. Yes. Yeah. And thanks to all of you for deciding to give up part of your morning to tolerate me for about 30 minutes. So thanks for joining. What I want you to do before we start, just reflect for about 1 minute on any kindness, an act of kindness that you personally experienced or you witnessed over the last week. So just think about that very briefly, and then I'll tell you why I ask you that question. And if anybody is moved to share that experience, I would be happy to hear.
All right, so you can type it in the chat, or, if you raise your hand, we'll see it and help you to unmute. So we're just giving them a second there to get their thoughts together. Just repeat the question for us, because there are quite a few people still joining.
Okay, I just want people to reflect on an act of kindness that you personally experienced over the last week, or that you saw, you witnessed, an act of kindness going through, that you were part of.
Great. So
Huh?
Hannah Clarendon says the gifts of fresh fruits. I had that
Wow.
gift as well.
Wow.
Yes, I had that gift as well, fresh fruits. Or it says someone bought a bread for a mentally challenged person. Oh,
Mm,
that's beautiful.
yes, yes. Nice. The fresh fruits, we take it for granted, but yesterday someone was telling me they actually they left their home country, went to this other country, and when they offered them a banana at the price they offered them, they said, no, I can't live there. They went back. Actually, it was someone from
Yeah,
Dominica. We take that for granted. But
indeed.
yes, okay, Chanel, that's nice. Yes.
Right. So people said somebody bought, paid for
Wow, wow,
groceries,
yes, yes,
bought a
yes.
meal for a hopeless person, a
Kingdom.
newlywed couple receiving help after a fire. Ooh.
Mhm. Yeah, these are nice. Okay. So thanks very much for that. We someone allowing another to go ahead of them in line of right, exactly. Good. Thanks for sharing those with me, and I'm sure you have many more. And I'll tell you why I ask you to do this. I mean, years ago, we talked about kindness and all of those things, and people thought, oh, it was just a wonderful thought, some beautiful, idealistic, imaginations and so. But now the research is showing that humans, I guess, we have developed over millennia to respond to kindness. Our bodies actually respond to kindness physiologically, psychologically. It actually does good for us. Um, Experiencing it, giving it, and witnessing it, all of those have positive impacts on us. So that's why I shared that. And sometimes we run our organizations and forget that that part is key. We are called to do that. So why I just want to quickly say why I came upon this concept of responsible leadership, because I know some of you in this group are saying, every other day we are coming up with this newfangled idea, the flavor of the month and all of that. So I know very well that sometimes, is a thought. But so a number of things. One, I heard CDB say at a few workshops, they talked about implementation deficit in the Caribbean. And I also saw that some of the countries, the richer Caribbean countries, invested significant sums in buying fancy systems. And after spending all that money, it just didn't go anywhere. The 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 other thing is I overheard at an aid donors conference, I overheard a European saying that the Caribbean has already solved all its problems. It is just not implementing the solutions. And that struck me because I went up to him and said, what exactly are you talking about? And he said he has visited all our universities, all our key institutions, our regional and national institutions. And the number of papers he's found where Caribbean people studied the problems that we have and proposed solutions. And he said, for some reason, we're just not implementing it. And then came COVID. And so I did work in companies before COVID, during COVID, and after COVID. And there has been a marked difference. The world has changed, and with employees, they've changed how it's an interesting change in terms of how employees are making decisions on at the job day to day, and how they are involving their own interests compared to how they did it before. And so I started looking at inclusive leadership. But in the literature, inclusive leadership is not very well defined. As a matter of fact, if you have 10 people writing about it, all 10 write something different. So it's hard to decide what exactly we are talking about. And then a year ago, an associate from Tunisia, she said to me, why don't you look at responsible leadership? And I said, oh, okay. Now, the thing is, in this field, what you do is you look at, top ranking journals. And if the thing is mentioned there and repeated, and people are citing it, you say, okay, that's a thing. And so those of you familiar with the ABS system, I looked for journals ranked at least 3 or 4. 4 is the top. And I saw that it was emerging in over the last 10 to 15 years. They're defining what we mean by responsible leadership. So it's now a body of knowledge is developing around that concept, and since COVID, since the pandemic, there's been more and more work because now we're realizing we need a new kind of leadership. So it is with that in mind, I said, okay, let me look some more at this. And then I said, okay, one of the things we're going to say, is it relevant to the region? Is it really a thing here? And I did, and by no means scientific, but I selected about 12 professionals, healthcare professionals in one Caribbean country. And I asked them the question. Once I explained what what I meant by responsible leadership in terms of how the literature defines it, they were quick to agree that they understand that well, and that's something they would want. They were also able to tell me, some of them, where they have experienced it and where they see it lacking. So then I'm thinking it's a thing. It's a thing we need to work on further. So the last thing before I move on to what we're going to do, so this diagram you see on the screen, I asked a young Dominican artist, I said, I want to present on next Tuesday on responsible leadership. And he said, well, what's that about? I said, well, okay, here is what it is, and what he did, he presented that. So I said, well, explain to me what you have there. And he said, okay, well, the sun is life-giving. So the sun's glow is embracing the planet. And so if that is responsible leadership, it's taking care of the whole planet. And if you see the spokes, so it's looking after people, the natural environment, and the money that we're progressing economically. So that I was very thankful for it. He hasn't charged me yet, so I don't know. At some point, we will discuss a reward. But I was very pleased because he did it very quickly. Okay, so what are we going to do today? I'm going to try to define responsible leadership, and I'm drawing that from the literature. I'll also give you a set of references that I used. Why is it rising in importance today? Why suddenly, because the thing is, a lot of these ideas that we come up with, people have been practicing elements of them in their own space over time. But when the world changes in a particular way, some of those ideas become more important, and therefore we start researching them and watching the impact and so. And of course, I'll give you two examples that I've seen even before I started looking into the idea of responsible leadership. Then we're going to look at how can responsible leadership transform organizations. So we look at what some ways in which it can transform an organization. And I know people always say, yes, you have this wonderful theory, but how do we put this in practice? So I've also tried to pull out at least for public sector, three things you can do, for private sector, three things you can do to embed responsible leadership. And of course, with every theory that comes up, people criticize. So I will show you the main criticisms I've seen in the literature where people say, oh, this cannot work and why it cannot work and so on. And we'll also look at how we can respond to those criticisms if we decide to embrace responsible leadership. One of the things, the last time I presented this about a month ago, people said, well, okay, so how is it different to servant leadership? How is it different to transformational leadership? And so in this presentation, I will just spend a moment or two, sort of differentiating them. And of course, with these things, we say, okay, now that you've listened to this, participated in this, what next? What are you going to do next? So responsible leadership. So this is the practice of guiding a team or organization with integrity, accountability, and empathy. And while you're doing that, you're balancing short-term goals with the long-term impact on people, society, and the environment. So it's about making ethical decisions that benefit not just your business, but all the stakeholders involved. Yeah. So it's not only about ethical decision making. So responsible leadership actually shapes the stakeholder relationships and multiple stakeholders. It empowers employees, it builds ethical climates, and ultimately drives sustainable performance across multiple levels of an organization. 50, 60, 70 years ago, you are in a company, you have 5 or 10 people to manage, and that's it. That's your line. Right now, you cannot operate like that. if you're in a leadership position, you not only have to deal with the people that report to you, you have to deal across, up and out. So you have suppliers, and during COVID, that became very, very key, that you had to also embrace stakeholders outside of the organization, people who you have over whom you have no control, you have no authority over them, but you have to build relationships, to make sure that things work. So what are some key behaviors? So of course, ethical decision making, and sometimes uh, we talk about this, but somehow we sometimes miss some of the basics of that. So if I'm in a leadership position and I'm about to make a decision, and that decision will only benefit me, then there's something wrong with that decision. If I am the one making it and I insist I'm going to be the person making it and it only benefits me and I'm in a leadership position, something is wrong. If that decision is only going to benefit my family, my relatives, my friends, and only them, and I am insisting that I am the one to make the decision, something is wrong with that. So that is at a very, very basic level. Now, there's the idea of empathy and compassion. And I know people talk about people when we say empathy and compassion, because I believe, so one of my beliefs is that our business schools are creating unidimensional leaders. So people who think they can lead from the head. And so you look around and you wonder, well, why are certain politicians succeeding when they seem to be talking foolishness? Why? And the thing is, you need multi-dimensional leaders. You need people who are leading with head, heart, and guts. You need people who can use their head to figure out the situation, use their heart to to validate people's emotions and their perspectives and so on, and then use their guts to get the people to move to the next step. You see? So I put a little adjective in front of empathy, something I call directive empathy. And you'll find that in the literature as well. That is where you combine empathy with decisive action. So you not only understand the emotions and validate the feelings and so on, but you guide the people towards a clear course of action or a solution. So you don't stop with just saying, oh yeah, I feel your pain. You have to move beyond that. Of course, transparency, very, very, very important. And I wouldn't belabor that. Also, accountability and inclusivity. Now, people, and I'm sure some of you know this. Many of the problems we face is because a set of people are feeling not heard or not seen, or they feel as though they're not important, and therefore they are acting in a way to fix that, to normalize that, and creating problems for the rest of us who think we know exactly where we're going. And until we include those people, everyone, we embrace everyone, and all the perspectives, as difficult as it may be, we will have that problem. Once you leave people behind or out, you will get strong counter movements. Of course, long-term thinking, not just for today, but over the long term, and not just for my organization, but for the community, for the planet, and all of that. Leading by example, I'm sure you've heard that several times. Yesterday, I was coaching a session for an organization based in the US with branches in East Coast, West Coast, and Hawaii. And so I've been working with them since February, and they're trying to fix an organizational problem. So February, March, their concern was, how do they get their people to? And so those of you familiar with action learning, I don't tell them what to do. I don't give them like what I'm doing now, sharing any concepts or ideas. I just make them ask each other questions. So by reflective questioning, they themselves will come up with the answer. And yesterday they hit upon it. The idea of agency, that, okay, the people have to know that they have the power to do it. But more than that, they stopped and they say, you know what? All these protocols and things we are setting up, nobody's really reading that. As a matter of fact, that's irritating them. What we need to do, it was the management group, what we need to do is to roll up our sleeves and deliberately lead by example. In other words, show how these things are done so people can do it after us. So leading by example is a key behavior of responsible leadership. Empowering others. And I know that's a term we bandy around, but here the difference. A lot of us want leadership positions so we can have power over others. Exercising power over others is not responsible leadership. getting power and sharing it with others, empowering others to be able to do, giving people power to do things. That is the hallmark of responsible leadership. So it inspires trust, accountability, and positive outcomes for teams and stakeholders, and you get shared success. So you create shared value. Yeah, it inspires teams to work together more effectively and achieve outcomes. Why is this? Why is responsible leadership the importance? Why is it rising? So one, the challenges in the world, things are changing. So things are becoming phenomenally complex, more complex than we can imagine. Yeah. And I know a lot of people are condemning AI and skeptical of the technology, but the complexity we have to deal with, we better find a way, to integrate some of that technology to help us with manage the complexity. Individuals are becoming more self-directed, inner-directed, so they are going for what they want inside. This has always been like that, but it is escalated tremendously, beyond the pandemic, and also what we call moral relativism. There was a time where, to a large extent, a large number of the people, percentage of the people in our societies, would go to a common source to figure out what's right and what's wrong. More and more, each individual is wanting to decide for themselves what is right and what is wrong. So you can see the chaos that we'll get from that. And unless you have leadership that, instead of punishing or exterminating people who have decided they want to be this way or that way, or they want to identify this way or that way, you need a leadership that will embrace, bring on board, those stakeholder interests, and ensure that somehow we can balance those needs so that we can influence more effectively towards, this shared value. Yeah. Of course, fostering trust. So as you can see around the world, in our own countries, people are losing faith. They're losing trust in government, in institutions, in all of that. And if you connect the dots, you can see that that is not going to a very good place. It's not going to a very good place at all. And therefore, responsible leadership, by practicing it, if we have a critical mass of leaders practicing responsible leadership, you will regain and build that trust. Of course, recruiting talent. I'm very interested. I find it very interesting, the people in their 20s now, how they choose to go to work and where they work. I mean, you'll say in some countries people don't have choice, but those who have the choice, they're deliberately choosing to work some places and not work other places, and to leave if it doesn't resonate with those things that they believe in. And therefore, so your organizations, your team, the way you manage those teams, if you use responsible leadership approaches, you will be more likely to attract, the top talent. And of course, it will influence team performance, and you have as well that increased demand. People are demanding that organizations uh, practice social responsibility, that they care for the environment, they care, for well-being of people, well-being of the society. They're asking for that, and responsible leadership will embrace, that. Now, handling crises. In crises, you want your people to give discretionary time, and what that means is that they have to give that time voluntarily. Yeah. Now, they will only do that if they feel cared for, if you have that holistic approach that responsible leadership advocates. So not only the immediate benefits, but also responsible leadership will generate sustainable positive impacts at those three levels: the individuals, the organization, and the planet. So, right. So let's sorry. Okay. So how do you transform organizations? So there are 5 points here. You cultivate ethical practices, you promote sustainability, you empower employees, you strengthen the stakeholder relationships, and you adapt to change. So ethical practices, of course, integrity and transparent decision-making processes, which builds trust among the stakeholders. In one country, I was told that the ministry gave a principal some money to make the school look nice over the the long vacation. And this particular principal said, okay, he got his girlfriend and his children, and basically he kept all the money and fixed the school. Now, people argue with that and they say, well, you know, as long as the job was done well, suppose these were the best people in the village, suppose that's not the point. The point is, what will your stakeholders feel about you? How will they start feeling and I know when I said this in Jamaica, they told me in Jamaica, any money collected by any government institution goes into the central funds. They cannot use it how they want. But how the optics of it and the trust that you now have in the community, even if the person is honest, even if those people did a great job, even if they gave value for money, even if they saved the money, the fact that people now believe, okay, so one man can decide how we use public funds, you know, and he can use it on himself, then that starts that fabric deteriorates, yeah. So of course, sustainability. We talked about empowering employees as well, giving them the power to do, and the stakeholder relationships, engage with all stakeholders. In one country, the fellow in charge of basic trust needs funds, you know, basic trust needs, they build little bridges in communities, little, how you call that, preschool, you know, things like that. And his concern was that the the people were not taking care of the things after he gave them. And then when he realized, when it was brought to his attention, is a question of stakeholder relationships. So when he started exploring that, things changed dramatically, because he realized he used to believe if he's building a preschool, the only ministry that he needs to talk with is Ministry of Education. Not realizing if you put a preschool in one of our villages, most likely community development will want to use it. Emergency, the people in charge of emergency will want to use it. There are different, yeah, the youth will want to use it and so on. He now has to figure out how does he get the other ministers involved. Of course, he has to find some support to get the thing to cabinet. And then he also realized that he has to talk with the political representative, whether or not the person is part of government. And that I know is a bit tricky in most countries. But what politicians like, they like to be able to know. So in other words, he now decided whether the person was in the sitting government or not. Once they represent the area, he would brief them before the project, and he'd give them, so that before the person sees it in the newspaper, they can talk knowledgeably. They can say, okay, now the bidding process is going. It's going to take 3 weeks, or now we have, you know, a contractor has been assigned, and you know, in another how many weeks, and so on. So he found immense success by using that. Of course, adapting to change, the responsible leadership will help you with that. Now, in the public sector, here are some things you can do. So policy integration, stakeholder engagement, learning and development. So embed responsible leadership principles into the policy framework. So ensure that your decisions prioritize societal well-being and sustainability. So for example, you may want to make sure, you know, renewable energy, for example, a lot of public sector buildings, for example, can house solar farms, solar energy farms, and also providing healthcare access. If you make that, embed that, you know, in your policy frameworks, that is one way, you know, to lead your organization, your public sector entity, you know, towards responsible leadership. Okay, stakeholder engagement actively involves citizens, the NGOs, and other stakeholders in the decision making. That builds the trust, ensure diverse perspectives. And I know we now think of diversity in a negative sense because of how the people up north have been bantering it around and making it relate just to how much melanin you have in your skin or not. But diverse perspective is very, very important. In recruiting for a regional organization, I always insist that in my panel, I have people, different people. So male, female, young, old, different disciplines. If we're recruiting for accounting, I make sure there's somebody in another discipline who's on the panel. And I remember doing this interview, and we recruiting for an HR, the person to head the duty station, the HR component of the duty station. And this gentleman came in, and from my assessment, he had everything, I think, no, sorry, let me give you the state of the lady. There was a lady also who, there are two cases. So the lady had everything she required. She had all the certification, all the qualification, all the experience. She spoke well at the interview. And I said, in my mind, I'm saying, this is the person. Of course, we scored, and then we had the little discussion. And so the women on the panel said, no, 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 she can't. I said, what you mean? She's the perfect, she seems very good. And they said, didn't you see how her weave is falling out of her head? No, poor me, I had not even noticed. I didn't pay attention to that. I was just looking at her technical competence, her ability to do that. And I didn't even know about weave in those days. And they said to me, she's going to lead HR. That means she has to model the dress code. She has to make sure her grooming and all that. And she will lose the moral authority to do that if she herself doesn't pay attention to her personal grooming. So that's just an example of how diverse perspectives can help you make a better decision. Learning and development in the public sector, you can provide leadership development programs for your public officials, focus on ethical decision-making, transparency, and resilience, and there are ways you can find out. Of course, in the private sector, here are some things that would apply. So corporate social responsibility. So you integrate that into your core business strategy to make sure you look at environmental, social, and governance, the ESG factors. And for example, you could adopt a sustainable supply chain practices or invest in community development projects. I met there's Barbados at a conference, and he stood up and he said, so one of the problems, I shouldn't have mentioned the country, but anyway, it's done gone. But people are supposed to pay national insurance on behalf of their employees, or in some countries we call it social security. And so in a lot of countries, employers are docking that, especially in the private sector. They are delinquent, they don't pay, and therefore the employees are put at in serious disadvantage, if something happens to them, they think. And this businessman said to us, before he purchases or before he contracts any supplier, any subcontracts, he checks to see if these people are owing on their social security, and if they are, he will not hire them. And so that's just an example. In other words, here you have a national problem, and somebody in private sector is saying, okay, if you want to deal with me, you have to be doing the right thing. And this is what we're talking about. So leadership development as well for the private sector, develop leaders to balance profitability with ethical considerations, encourage them to lead by example, fostering a culture of integrity. I'm just looking at the Yeah, yes, Lillian. Yes, she did. She didn't get the job, and because again, the people felt strongly that she had to be an example, and in their view, they felt that reflected, because she will be the one telling people, to make sure their grooming is proper. In that particular industry, it was important that they have the proper grooming, and all of that, and they felt that if you came to an interview, because we assume that you'll be 10 times worse when you get appointed than you were at the interview. So if this is your best appearance, we expect that different things will fall apart as you go along. It's an example. Of course, performance metrics. So you have to develop metrics to measure. And the private sector, this is it's important in all sectors, but this is what they moan about. Develop metrics to measure the impact of responsible leadership. So your employee satisfaction, your community engagement, your environmental footprint reduction. And there are ways to do that. Now, so you tailor those strategies to the unique needs of your organization in the sector in which it is, so that you can effectively implement responsible leadership and drive meaningful transformation. Okay, so like everything else, there are critics. So the critics say, how are you going to balance all these stakeholder needs and, and then dilute, your organization is striving for this and you're there fussing about community and all of those things. That's one criticism. And they feel that if you overemphasize ethics, you find that innovation and agility will be stifled because leaders become overly cautious in their decision making. Then measuring the impact. they say outcomes like societal or environmental benefits are difficult to assess and therefore difficult to quantify. And so it's hard to assess the effectiveness of responsible leadership. And of course, I mentioned before, cultural and contextual factors. People say, oh, responsible leadership may not be universally applicable. So cultural and situational differences can affect relevance and success. So how do we address those? So balancing stakeholder needs. So you highlight successful case studies where organizations have managed to meet diverse stakeholder needs while remaining profitable, social impact, strong financial performance, and you use stakeholder engagement frameworks like integrating reporting or triple bottom line, where you include, the three elements of people, profit, yeah, and the planet. No, no, I know our time. I must apologize. We're running a little, but so the there's a hotel in one of our countries that received a number of international awards, and so I went to look at it and speak with the leader, and this is several years ago. So what he had done, he took a cliffside that most people thought was waste, and he created a beautiful, environmentally friendly resort. He made sure he saved the land from the erosion down into the sea. He built the cottages in such a way. I mean, when you go on the property, you had to kind of search for these cottages in between the natural vegetation that was there, the natural forest. So that's one part of it. He used friendly materials, so no paints, and so he used wood and stone. He tried to use most of the material he could find in the area. And the most important thing is the people. He made sure that he hired people who were from those communities. And sometimes he looked for others who had migrated, but they were from the community, and he brought them back to leadership positions and so on. And so, and he wanted, for example, the cuts of meat. He got the livestock people in the communities to learn how to make the cuts of meat for the resort. The fishermen, what kind of fish he needed. So these people developed through the process. And so I asked about it because this is in the wilderness, and I'm saying, what about security of the people? And he said, I'll be surprised to know he spends very little on security, because the staff treat the guests as family, because they feel they own this thing. They're so proud of being part of this. Now, of course, a hurricane destroyed that property, and he rebuilt the property in another, the hotel in another area of the country. And he invited me to look at this place. And as he walked me through the construction, I was fascinated. So he meets a little boy who, all little boy is doing is planting something on the pathway to the hotel. He stops, he calls him by name, and he asks him, what did you learn this week that you can use after you leave here? And the boy says, he learned transplanting, he learned this, he learned that. Then when he took me to the different parts of the building, instead of saying, here's the laundry or here is the kitchen, he calls the places by the name of the person who's going to lead that function. So, for example, if the person in charge of housekeeping is Mary, he said, this is Mary's laundry. And she has already spoken to the interior decorators and explained to them how she wants it, how nice she wants it and so on. And he says, oh, this is Kenneth's kitchen and so on. So it's something that can be done. And again, I say with artificial intelligence, that can help you. If you use it well, it can help you balance all those stakeholder needs, because you can find them, you can know how to treat each one, and you can keep track of what you're doing. Focus on innovation. You show how it fosters innovation rather than hindering it. And we feel if you stretch your leaders in that way, they can become even more creative. Quantifying success, of course, develop robust metrics to measure the impact, and you have those tools. And so I remember as a classroom teacher in another life, I was very concerned about the affective skills domain, like how people treat each other, how people behave in groups and so on. And my supervisors, who were experts in pedagogy, they tell me, please don't teach anything that you cannot measure. Of course, you can see now, 40 years ago, we didn't teach those things, and with the kind of societies we have. Because before that era, teachers just taught, and great part of their teaching was not the subject they taught. but the behaviors that how they cared for their students, how they dealt with them, you know, and so I'm saying resist the temptation to say if we can't measure it, let's not do it. Find ways of measuring it. Responding profitability techniques, you make sure you frame it as a long-term investment rather than a short-term cost, and emphasize that if you do those sustainable and ethical practices, you build resilience against risks like public backlash, vandalism, regulatory fines, or environmental crises. The cultural context, you make sure that that you adapt, you know, to what you have in your environment. So if your culture is community oriented, it is collective, you do community oriented initiatives. If it's an individualistic culture, of course, you look at personal development opportunities within the organization. Loy, I don't know, can I go on for another 2 minutes? I can wrap up in 2 minutes. Is that okay?
2 minutes.
Yes. So responsible leadership versus servant leadership, this is it. So both of them focus on ethics and integrity. They are people-centric and they look at long-term impact. Of course, but the responsible leadership, although it looks at the well-being of people, it also focuses on the bigger picture, macro level, striking a balance between societal and environmental responsibilities with organizational success. So servant leadership, on the other hand, places greater emphasis on the growth and well-being of the individuals within the organization. So that's at the micro level. In terms of transformational, both are rooted in ethical foundation. They aim for long-term impact. They are people-oriented. The emphasis and execution of these styles cater to different needs and contexts. So transformational leadership is more about driving innovation, inspiring individuals, and fostering internal change. Responsible leadership focuses on balancing organizational objectives with ethical and societal obligations. So, of course, I'm done, Loy, but what I want you to be able to answer for yourself, what will you do differently now that you've been introduced to this idea? What kind of future will you create for your organization using responsible leadership practices? And how might you best spread these ideas about leadership? Here are a few, all of these references are either rated in journals rank 3 or 4 on the ABS scale. So these are a few. There are many more. People are writing more and more about it. So that's it from me, Loy.
All right. Much food for thought. Thank you so much. And so we're going to spend the next, say, about 12 minutes or so, just taking any questions or comments that you have. And there is a question in the chat from Rosemary Delaney Smith, and she's asking, how do you measure leadership impact?
Yeah. That's a good question, and we always have that. So so in the literature, they actually have things that you look at, and their dimensions uh, that you look at. So you if you're measuring for responsible leadership, you'd have to measure how well are the teams collaborating with each other? What's the collaboration level within them? Because you're making the assumption that the type of leadership will foster that. You will also look at the community, the response of the community to your organization, because remember, that is one facet of responsible leadership, that you are, you want your stakeholders to feel positively about you so that they continue to give you opportunities and all of that. And then, of course, you measure what you're doing for the planet. So, for example, if a leader just spends a lot of money on his pet projects, he has this wonderful idea and, it doesn't really help anybody. It's just his thing. He has this dream of doing this thing without connecting with the other person. Of course, that will be measured one way as opposed to being measured another way. So those are just some. But the literature gives ways, and that is one of the things I'm actually thinking of between this year and next year. I'm hoping, if they allow me, to do a little more structured research in a particular sector within the Caribbean, and to see the impact, the impact of leadership. So I hope that answered. Yes, Lloyd, any more?
All right. Not seeing any more questions, but certainly quite a few comments, which, so first of all, people are showing their appreciation.
Yeah, well, I
Um,
see one, Lloyd. I see one. Why
oh,
is
why is
empathy
empathy
being
being
identified as
identified as
negative?
a negative,
Yes.
not
No,
progressive?
no, no. Right. So it's not that it is being identified as negative. The reality is that the way we have schooled our people um, to lead headwise results. We want this, we want that, we want the reform, we want the concepts, we want the models and the theory of the thing. Um, and so we find that a lot of the hard stuff is being neglected. We neglect the hard things. And the thing is, unless you lead from the heart, uh, people won't walk with you. So it's not as so I'm saying that we seem to view it as a weakness. However, it is very critical to lead properly. Yeah. Because even the most horrible leaders around the world, who people vote for and they want them, yes, they have all these bad qualities, but the thing that really makes them win is that they make people feel that they're cared about. They make people feel that they care about what these people care about, and they make them believe they are going to address it. Yeah, because people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So it's not. I'm not saying it's negative. I'm saying we view it. A lot of us, because of the way we're schooled, we view it as a weakness, but it's actually very critical in responsible leadership.
All right.
Yes.
Thank
Any
you
more,
so
Lloyd?
much. Not seeing more question, but there is a comment that I think it might be very useful for us to explore a little bit more. And so Zebulon says he's extremely pleased to see ethics and socially responsible concepts highlighted here, as opposed to any means necessary approach, which I quite agree. And so that to highlight that comment, Keith has a question here. Can you impact a team who refuses to accept things can be done not only one way? How do you lead if your team members refuse to be developed?
That's a I put off my video because of internet issues. But yes, so again, and as I told you, I was working with this group, Doris Duke Foundation, and they realized that they can't make the people do the things. They have to model it. They have to create the environment in which the people would more likely do this rather than that. Now, I believe you have to find a critical mass. So you have to find like minds across the organization or within the team, bring them on board, and then keep showing the benefits of how it's going. And sometimes situations will force it. One of the bands I follow, a reggae band, because they play a lot of the vintage reggae, Bob Marley culture, Burning Spear. So they were very popular because of their lead singer, who was a very good-looking woman. She moved very well on stage. She had an awesome voice, and then she decided to leave the group, and the group thought they would fall apart. But what they did, they regrouped. So they had this person who was leading, and because they say, okay, just 5 boys, we cannot make up an impact. And then they reached out to all the people who had mentored them along the way, and they recreated the group. And now every night they play at a different venue, and they always have a big following. And if you observe them, they involve the community. So they collect funds to help struggling artists, with intellectual property issues. If any of their mentors are in the crowd, they invite them up on stage and they have them sing with them, and that sort of thing. They if one of their members has a relative who is overseas and visiting and is a musician, they bring them on. So they kind of grapple with all the stakeholders, the community, the internal, and so they work as a team. They work almost seamlessly, and that to me is an example of responsible leadership. Yes. Any more,
Thank
Lloyd?
you. And there's a question here, but I think Hannah Clarendon, if you could just clarify just the way you type the question is not as
I'm
clear.
wondering
So,
if she's thinking why I chose only those two. I don't know. Is that what you're
oh,
saying?
I'm not sure. So Hannah, I wonder if you could just elaborate on your
Oh,
question
oh, oh.
for
Oh, no,
us.
she's asking why those two are not responsible. What I will do, I will try. I have developed okay, so let me give you an example. If you take servant leadership, the primary purpose of servant leadership is serving and empowering others, putting their needs first to help them grow and succeed. Responsible leadership, on the other hand, balances the needs of multiple stakeholders while achieving organizational results. Servant leadership, the key goal is to develop individuals and create a supportive community. Responsible leadership promotes sustainability, corporate responsibility, and societal well-being. So that's how you balance it out. The orientation, when you look at servant leadership, the orientation is inward-looking, emphasizing the personal and professional development of team members. Whereas for responsible leadership, it's outward looking. So it emphasizes the broader impact on society and the environment. What is the leader's role in servant leadership? The leader's role is seen as a servant whose primary aim is to uplift and support others. In responsible leadership, the leader's role is seen as a steward accountable for the organization's impact on all stakeholders. For servant leadership, decision-making prioritizes the needs and interests of individuals over organizational objectives. For responsible leadership, the decision-making balances profitability with ethical and social considerations. In terms of implementation, servant leadership relies on fostering trust, empathy, and collaboration within the team. Responsible leadership is often aligned with corporate governance, sustainability initiatives, and global responsibility. Now, I can also do the same for you for transformational leadership. So, primary focus for transformational leadership, it inspires and motivates followers to achieve extraordinary outcomes and embrace change. Responsible leadership balances organizational goals with accountability to society, stakeholders, and the environment. Transformational leadership, in terms of its key goal, is to transform individuals, teams, and organizations by instilling vision and shared purpose. Responsible leadership, the key goal of responsible leadership is to ensure sustainability, ethical governance, and social responsibility. What's the orientation of the two? For transformational leadership, it's more internally focused, prioritizing organizational growth, innovation, and culture. Responsible leadership, the orientation is outward focus, addressing societal, environmental, and global responsibilities. What is the leader's role in transformational leadership? In transformational leadership, the leader acts as a visionary, inspiring followers to exceed expectations and embrace innovation. Responsible leadership, the leader acts as a steward, ensuring the organization's actions positively impact all stakeholders, internal and external. And motivational approach, the transformational leadership relies on charisma, inspiration, intellectual stimulation, and personalized consideration. Responsible leadership relies on accountability, collaboration, and collective responsibility. Collective responsibility. The outcomes for transformational leadership, we have high performance, innovation, and a motivated workforce aligned with a compelling vision. Responsible leadership, the outcomes we want is ethical, balanced growth with an emphasis on long-term societal impact. And as I said, because of the way the world is changing, those demands are there. So Hannah, I trust that those answer your question. There's more to it, but basically that's how we distinguish the two. Yeah.
All right, thank you. Probably take this final question. Agnes is asking, in your years of leadership
From Agnes.
experience, yes, she's asking, in your opinion, what's the most important trait that makes a leader successful? Oh my
I would
God,
say
that's
I
a
would
deep
say
one.
well no. When when I say assertive humility is
Oh, sorry,
you
Val,
you
can you
see,
just
because
repeat? Val,
sometimes when you say humility, sorry.
you broke up a little bit, so maybe turn off back your
Okay,
camera
let me
and
go
just
back off.
restart the
Yes.
response. Yes.
Okay. Right. Okay, so I say assertive humility because sometimes when you say humility, people feel you'll just crawl under the table. I'm saying humility in which you have such a healthy ego that you are able to not need the credit all the time. Even if you had the idea and Jane in your team comes up with it, you are big enough to say, hey, that's Jane's idea, and we're going along with Jane's idea. Jane has done that. And let me just give you another example. In one organization I was consulting with, so there was one of these leaders that is they were change. And this person would go to their team and say, well, I don't know what senior management is doing, and da 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 da. No, and that person felt that they were being authentic. Now, here is the way I make the difference and why I talk about assertive humility. It is okay for you to tell your team, listen, I have no idea where these people say they're going. But you cannot stop there. Because if you let that emotion on your people, then any number can play. You lose authority, you lose credibility. You have to say, however, while they're trying to clarify this, here is where I believe we should head. If anybody has any other ideas, let's hear them. Let's go here. And as soon as I get more clarity from the leadership, I will let you know. You see the difference? So it's not just about yeah, okay, I don't know and I don't know. I don't know. You can say you don't know, which is authentic, but you have to be assertive enough to say, let's move it. What we call the directive empathy. You have to be able to feel the pain of the people, feel your own pain, and move forward. Yes. Yes, Loy. Sorry.
No need to be sorry. Thank you so very much. And we are really at the very end. And so, Vo, my parting question to you is this. Where does one start to be, to grow and adapt, responsible leadership principles? There are many different kinds of leaders here. I think all of us are leaders, but at different levels, from the cabinet secretary, permanent secretary, down to maybe a junior team leader. Where does one start?
I believe it has to start from within. You have to care. You have to genuinely, because people know the difference, if you're genuine or not. So you have to genuinely care about people. You have to care about the environment. So you have to assess those things. I mean, if you don't have those things, you will fall through at some point. You'll fall off the edge. So you have to care about people, care about the environment, care about the community, care about the organization's goals. And then you have to find ways. You have to ask yourself, how do I demonstrate that care? How do I make people believe that I genuinely care about them? How do I make them understand and believe that I care about the environment, that I care about the community, that I care about, what's next? And so you start practicing that and having conversations. So you want, because once you start assessing yourself, you then start looking for these same things in your fellow leaders, and then you try to bring a few people on board, and gradually you will make a shift. Uh, we lead the way we have been led very often, and we are very timid to break the cycle. So I find, like, even when I do sessions with organizations, you find after the first 2 weeks, just like those revival ceremonies, people go ahead and they're trying this thing, and then the first pushback they get, they fall right back to command and control, which is what they experience through their lives, and they do it. So the short answer, Loy, is introspection, and then try to see those dimensions of responsible leadership and see how you can demonstrate them, and then enroll other people into your way of thinking and gradually make the shift. Yeah. If you are in a position to lead, and when I say lead, but to call the shots, then make sure you incorporate the responsible leadership practices in your performance assessments, in those of you who use balance scorecard, make sure it's represented in there somehow, in either the stakeholder channel, the customer channel, wherever you put it, make sure those things are embedded. Lloyd, I don't know if I answered the question. Is that okay?
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for sharing from your storehouse of knowledge and experience and from your research. And you see all the gratitude being expressed in the chat. And so we're just going to close out our webinar for April 2025, just with a couple of announcements. And so our call for applications are out. Our call is out for our mid-level leadership development program. This is one of our flagship leadership development programs. It's our 3-month program that will run from September through to this early December 2025. And so if you want to learn more about the mid-level leadership program, either email us at info@caricad.net. You can also access information and the application form via our website, www.caricad.net. If you want to receive regular updates from CARICAD, please do go to our website and subscribe. There you'll get all the updates sent to you. You'll be put on our email listing. Whenever we have programs on offer, you will receive those as well. And so, like I said, visit our website at www.caricad.net and email us at info@caricad.net. And so we're going to just place in the chat the link to our evaluation poll for today's webinar. We always say at CARICAD, feedback is a gift. And so we would love that gift from you. All right. Just making sure that can come up in the poll. The poll can come up in the chat. Oh, maybe it's not available today. We might be having a little technical difficulty. No, there. Well, I see the link to the in the chat. If you want to access more information about our mid-level leadership development program, that link is there in the chat as well. I'm just waiting to see if the link for the poll will just come up. Give us a second. All right. It seems that we might be having a little technical difficulty with that evaluation, but please, no, there it is. It is in the chat. You'll see it there, evaluation poll. So it's not very long, and included in that is opportunity to let us know any other topics you want us to cover in any future webinars. And you also see where you can follow us on our various social media platforms. That's also in the chat. Thank you all so very, very much. And I wish for you a productive rest of the day and a productive week. For those of you who celebrate Easter, wishing you a holy and reflective season. And you can look out for the advertisement for our upcoming webinars for the rest of the upcoming months. Thank you all very much. Take care.